Let's talk herd.
Yeah. So how do you work with like judgment? Do you feel that you judge people, other people, for not being able to do what you can do? And does that come up for you? Is that because it's quite a tricky thing?
Yeah, so judgment gets replaced with discernment. Everyone can do
Mm,
this. There's no reason to judge people for what they choose at all. There's no reason. And the more emotionally mature we become, the more
mm,
our judgment turns into discernment. And it's a physical experience because judgment in the mind is a projection of us not knowing how to meet our needs in
mm,
that moment based on our individual traumas. And so anytime somebody's judging someone else in terms of right and wrong or good or bad, that's just an
mm,
avoidance of self and an avoidance of being in the body with some sort of need we haven't learned how to meet within ourselves. And
mm.
usually it's the relationship to shame that produces that. And so I have opinions, but I don't believe in right and wrong. So judgment's not really in the way of how I operate.
Do you feel that somebody would have to live the way that you're living to truly be
No,
in the flow?
definitely not. I'm living this way because that's the only way I can afford to feed 20 horses after not making money off of them anymore.
Yeah.
I would not choose to live like
Yeah.
this. You do not need to live like this to be in your body and quit thinking so much.
Yeah. And do you think, because I have, yeah, I don't know, I'm just, I certainly draw the parallel. I do find it very challenging to, to sort of survive financially when I, you know, because I just can't even consider going back to, I mean, I always had some kind of awareness, but of, not wanting to exploit the horses, like make money out of them, but certainly now it's just not a possibility, and it is challenging. But then I wonder if that's just because I believe it is, or it's to do with beliefs.
It's a fair question. Yeah, I think the more emotionally mature we become, the less we need outside of ourselves to feel safe and okay. And so
Oh
I would
yeah.
prefer modern conveniences and indoor plumbing, but I don't need it to feel content and full and satisfied and in relationship to my
Mm,
soul. And I would choose this life over the comfortable life I was living, 1,000 times over. Free of fear, to be free of the confines of judgment and big gaps in emotional development. I would choose this every day for the rest of my life over some external sense of security.
yeah, I mean, I often think that well, it would be so nice to have a cushion, to know that there was just, but then on the other hand, would it really? Like, is it ever enough? Is it ever enough? Because you've still got the same, if you haven't resolved that fear or anxiety about lack, then, you can probably be a billionaire and still feel lack on some level. So,
Oh, for sure.
yeah,
Yeah.
it reminds me a little bit of a story or something my sister was telling me about. Um, she was watching I think it was a program on the French TV about Cuba. I hope this is right because my geography is terrible, but this country that's had an embargo from America, like they've had this, they haven't been able to export goods and things for so long that they don't have, they haven't, they've stayed basically a third world country, and they don't have phones and they don't have any of those things. But she said they were such happy people, and also they still have all their nature.
Yeah, that's been my experience of these places. Hmm.
Yeah, like their nature is untouched, their country is untouched. So although you could say they've sort of suffered that lack in a certain way, they've also kept their integrity as an indigenous, society. So Yeah, we kind of have this. There's quite a pressure, isn't there, now to become successful in the way that is, seen to be success, what success is seen to be. And yeah, so it's not that easy, I think, to be a Westerner because we've lost a lot of our community and our appreciation for community, and yet we're still aware. We're still aware of like how we feel often.
Mm.
So yeah, how do you feel about, because there's a lot of divisiveness in the horse world, and I don't even know. I mean, I don't even know about the horse world as such anymore because it is mostly within that control paradigm. That's what the whole thing is structured on. I feel like my journey is, or my what I'm doing is just kind of what feels good to me, is this vibrational work. And so I don't really seek to influence that much outside of that, other than sharing and doing this kind of thing. But how do you feel is the best way to speak to people, like to help them? Because I think people they feel judged, they feel like they're not good enough, and they feel like,
Mm.
oh, I'm just doing the wrong thing. And people they want to ride, they want to do those things. So how would you feel is like a good way to open the door a little bit? Or does that not really interest you? Or is that not really your path?
I have no interest in influencing people who aren't inviting what I have to offer. None whatsoever. I write my books, I do my things, I answer requests like this, and if somebody resonates, I make myself available to support them. But
Mm,
all of that work that I do, I've formed a nonprofit around so that it's accessible and free basically for people if they want to show up for it. And I follow what my yes is. So that could look different day to day. I do all sorts of things to make money and pay the bills. And
yeah.
I'm not trying to save the world. I'm
Yeah.
very much
Yeah.
living what I practice.
Yeah. What are you doing at the moment in terms of like what situation are you in? You're right. You've written your book. Do you work with
Hmm.
people with their horses if they ask you,
No, because my
or
work's
just
about
people?
teaching people how to work with their own
Yeah.
horses. And so,
Yeah, that's what I meant.
and now that the book's out, everything you could ever need to know
Mm,
is in the book. And if you need more than that, you're probably not ready to do it. The first step to this is dealing with the relationship to shame and
mm,
growing up and being personally accountable for your own inner critic. I cannot help people who refuse to accept themselves. There's no way. That's a child, and that we have to
mm.
reparent ourselves.
That sounds a little bit kind of harsh, though. It sounds a little bit hard.
Super harsh, super hard. My experience for 10 years. If you can't handle the level of accountability so that we can be adults in the relationship to other adults, I am not going to capitalize on
Mm,
trauma. How to do that for themselves and how to stand strong
mm,
in their radical self acceptance, and quit, wasting.
mm,
That is boundaried love. And that is the love we are missing on this planet. That is the divine masculine holding space for really difficult emotions. And that is the role I play in this female body. I definitely bring the masculine to the table because women really struggle with that.
mm. Yeah. Does that feel loving to you?
We are domesticated by our parents, by society, and we have been for as long as human history has been recorded. And by that, I mean we have misinterpreted love for most of the women I work
Okay.
with have really
Mm,
dysfunctional relationships to anger, to fear,
right.
to the stronger, more physically sensation emotions that aren't always comfortable.
Why do you think they struggle
And so one of the services I
with
offer is
that?
holding space to help them move through and develop that and mature that. But I'm only willing to meet someone where they're willing to meet themselves. Otherwise, we just perpetuate this codependent paradigm masquerading as love.
Mm. Mm. So when you say they, is it because they can't be with those feelings? Like they feel anger, but they won't like admit that to themselves? Is that what you mean? Like they won't engage with it as a feeling?
Well, I think a lot of people engage with it on a certain level as a feeling. And passive
Mm.
aggressiveness, rage, it's where anger becomes a very subtle, intuitive guidance around boundaries. And
Mm.
most people have a really hard time staying in their body to mature that relationship to those people.
Mm.
And it is very physically painful at first. That initial integration of some of these stronger emotions is very physically painful. And depending on where their blockages are in their energy centers,
Mm.
I've had clients whose throats will shut down on them,
Mm.
who will feel like they're having a heart attack. And my job is to hold space for that and be another body who has already matured that emotion to help guide them through that process so that they can also, but that's only part of it.
Mm.
Being willing to surrender into the body fully and be with whatever that is one part. The other part is getting this under control
Mm.
so that you aren't creating the part people don't want to take responsibility for.
Yeah. What does the word forgiveness mean to you? Is it about people forgiving themselves?
To let go of, well, that's not a terrible way of putting it. Sure, we could work with that. Yeah. Allowing. Forgiveness is allowing, but being boundaried about it. And the boundaries
Mm.
part is the part that many people are missing. They want to make other
Mm.
people responsible for their needs and boundaries instead of being responsible for their own and not abandoning themselves through
Yeah.
whatever process they're in.
And that's kind of like projecting, isn't it? When you sort of see in other people the issues you have in yourself.
It depends. It's only projection if there's an emotional reactivity to it, because noticing
Hmm.
what's going on in somebody is not the same thing as projecting. But
Hmm.
when you can only see them
Yeah.
and not see yourself, then it becomes projection.
So do you meditate? Is that how would you say that you control your mind or you bring your mind into a space that isn't controlling you or isn't creating thoughts that are problematic?
Well, when you mature emotion, those thoughts go away to a large extent because there's no energy swirling
Mm.
anymore to create them because you've integrated whatever that trauma. And how I'm using the word trauma is a gap or an unresolved gap in emotional development. So when you have fused that gap, the swirling thoughts disappear. And so I inhabit my body pretty
Mm.
significantly throughout the day. I don't need to
Mm.
meditate to return there. And if I have an issue come up, I have so much physical resourcing now to just stay with it that techniques help with an overstimulation of external things. But on a day to day basis,
Mm.
I'm just here in my body and very aware of what I'm thinking and doing that could be contributing to unnecessary turmoil or not. But I have a lot of agency just to let it go and drop it.
Yeah. And do you find that when you're in the company of other people more, that gets harder? Like, is it something that's easier to do when you're on your own?
Depends on the people.
Yeah. Yeah.
It depends on the people. I have a developing partnership now, and I haven't had an intimate relationship like that for many years. And luckily, I found somebody that is very much on the same page
Mm.
and willing to do this relating in a conscious way so that the relationship is a container for growth and evolution and not for comfort. And it's a very difficult thing for people to choose to relate for the purpose of seeing oneself fully,
Mm.
which is what I had been doing with the horses
Yeah.
until I realized, "Ooh, I'm still taking advantage of their captivity to do that. And that
Mm.
doesn't feel as challenging or as fulfilling as getting in relationship with a consenting equal adult
Mm.
who is going to uncover the deepest wounds with you.
Yeah. So, do you spend time with the horses now, or I take it you don't they're not part of your work in that sense?
they're part of my family or my life. They're
No.
outside right now. I mean, I interact with them every single day, but they're definitely not part of my work. Other than how all of my life is part of my work. They're not separate from my day to day. And we have we're developing a sanctuary here around and for them to support them. And, but there's nothing about access to them that leads to work for me. It's about unconditional caretaking and using the taking care of them, the picking up their manure, the feeding them, the trimming their hooves, all that, using it as a practice of how can I be more like them now that they're in a more undomesticated state, and how can I use their model and example to be a better human animal, but not necessarily in relationship to them. It happens, but it's not part of the necessary equation. And of course, we spend time with them because they need attention and to feel whole and well-being here. But there's not a lot of focus on relating to the horses. It's more like a responsibility to them.
Do you feel they have something to offer you? Like, do you feel that they in themselves want to offer other than just, who they are?
It's a slippery slope. The psychology of dependency means that the dependent depends on the guardian or the caregiver for their own emotional regulation. So quite often, when an animal in your captive dependency seeks you out to offer themselves to you, they are trying to regulate you so that they can feel better.
Okay.
And often in the spiritual bypassing community, we turn that into the horses are trying to heal us and help us. But the reality is that any captive dependent just wants to make the space they're stuck in feel better. So they're just trying to regulate us for their own biological well-being, not because of some soul contract to be in service to humanity.
Yes. Yeah. I feel like I I feel good when they feel good in themselves, like when they feel independent. Yeah, even like that basic relationship of feeding them. I find I want to be careful with that. Like I don't give mine food in buckets, and I do give them minerals, but I try to make that something that's there when they need it and not kind of giving it to them, because I feel like it does just create something that doesn't feel good to me.
Yeah, it's attachment. I mean, what we have removed here is there's zero attachment to the relationship to the horses. They are here because I had them. I love them. I take care of them. I, of course, relate to them and spend time with them. But I'm here like a parent should be to a child. I'm here to take care of their basic needs and support them until they die, because they're permanently captive. Once they're gone, I'm going to really focus my attention on humans and other beings that can consent, which is what I'm doing a lot now. The animals here are the end of a paradigm I no longer want to perpetuate.
Would you feel good, like if you could find a nice place for them to be in a wilder situation, or do you think that they're just fine as they are?
This is about as wild as it gets. And if somebody would take care of them and give them at least this quality of life, I would absolutely let somebody do that. But this is about as wild as it gets. We have an expansive piece of land, and they are not influenced or interrupted or bothered in any way. And I'm committed to take care of them for the remainder of their lives and allow them to be a model for what this is, but without letting the public have access to them.
Yeah. Yeah. How much land have you got for them?
They have 80 acres.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's quite a lot, isn't it?
But even if they didn't, I mean, to be honest, the most mature, beautiful, balanced herd management situation I ever had was on 1 acre with 3 to 5 horses. And we just managed it so well that it worked really well for those horses in terms of their ability to move and play. And those horses were as vibrant and, healthy as I've ever had horses. So the amount of land is really not the issue. It's about how well can the basic needs of the animal be met and how much
Yeah.
emotional sovereignty can you support.
Yeah. And you feel like the practical stuff is just a reflection of the inner work that you do. Like those things become clear. How, the kind of how to of their management.
For the most part, yeah.
As I find that my horses are like less and less, they kind of like to manage their own feet. And yeah, I'm kind of being able to let go a little bit on that and just allow that to happen. Although practically they probably don't, some of them don't get enough actual movement during the day to. So there is a sort of level of like, like it doesn't quite come together in full harmony because just practically, like some of them do get slightly long feet, and then and then we work together and we do their feet, but I think they would be happier just to be, as they naturally would be. So, do you find anything coming up like that?
It just depends and it's very individual. Well, like there's no right and wrong here. I do what I choose to believe is necessary for
Mm.
their immediate care and well being. And as their caregiver, that's
Mm.
my business and my choice. And they trust me to make those decisions because I accept that role as the person responsible for their basic needs. I don't look to a dependent for an equal conversation around what they want me to do to them and what they don't in terms of their care. It's
Okay.
my choice. And I listen to them and their opinion matters. But if I think somebody's toes are too long and because I have so much of a holistic understanding of how that affects the rest of the body and the teeth and all of the rest of the pieces. If I decide your toes are too long, you're getting trimmed. And that's the
Yeah.
choice I get to make because I'm your caregiver and I'm responsible for you. And some of them, I really do, they have a stronger voice because I have more wild horses
Okay.
and I have horses with pathology. I have horses who have always had wild feet. And so each individual has a different weight of influence, but at the end of the day, it's my call because I'm the one making choices for our lives. And that is part of this, like, including horses, dogs, cats, whoever's in our care, they really depend on us to stand in our authority as the caregivers and decision makers, so that they can surrender to our leadership in a way that we're not abusing power or taking advantage of them for our own benefit.
Mm. So you do feel that you are their leader in that sense?
I'm their leader because they're my captives. There is no other way around it. I am the one in charge. I am the one who put them in the fence. I am the one that they depend on. So it's not an opinion so much as I am the one in the position of power in their lives. And to not acknowledge that is to ask for a lot of incongruence. But I definitely listen to them and let them influence my leadership
Yeah.
significantly.
Yeah, I suppose I feel like they, it's a slightly different kind of outlook in that I feel like where we are in our physical body is a choice, like that we come to experience something. So I understand like where you're coming from and what you mean by that. But I also feel like they do have responsibility for their own soul choices. And I feel like that is there, that exists.
Then why don't you open the gate?
Because they're a horse. They've come into this horse experience.
That's what I'm saying. So why not open the gate? If you really believe they have ultimate responsibility for themselves.
Because there are two dimensions. Just because you just because they are a horse and this world as it is isn't set up for that, for me to open the gate, doesn't mean that they don't have that their soul isn't there, like their soul being, and that they don't transcend that, or that they're not, like, I don't see them as the body only. Like, there is that whole element of, for example, we'll do like healing together, and it's something that we do as a herd, physically in their physical body. Yeah, see, I don't see them as captive in their. They would consider. They would. I mean, I think a lot of horses consider us captives because we're captive in our lives in certain ways. So, yeah, I don't see it quite so black and white.
That's not black and white. It's the has to be understood before we can have this broader spiritual conversation. It's not about just seeing them as their bodies. It's about understanding the power dynamic and what that causes mentally, physically, emotionally, and spiritually to a dependent. And when I talk about dependency, I'm not just speaking to their bodies. I mean, they literally rely on you to make choices.
Yeah, physically, but I don't feel that they are dependents in terms of, or maybe use the
Oh,
word captives. I don't feel that they're captive on a soul level at all.
okay.
So it's
So
just
why don't you open the gate?
because they're
No
physically
one is captive on a soul
dependent.
level. No one is captive on a
Well,
soul level. We're
maybe
not, I'm talking
soul
about
isn't
the
the right
actual
word.
horse.
Okay, energetic level then. Energetic level.
Okay. But so what have you learned about the nervous system in terms of energy and how our influence in those power dynamics when we are literally in charge of someone's dependent needs, we affect their energy system big time. And that's kind of what I try to get people to understand is we can't just live in the spiritual reality without coming to terms with what we're doing in the physical and emotional realms.
I think it's all connected. There isn't some kind of separation like that. I mean,
What's
when you say what have you
separating?
learned,
Can answer both again.
what I've learned is just to be aware of the energy of the, like, what we share as beings. So I mean, it's it's a connection that's fundamental. It's just there's not the same separation there. So I don't that dependency isn't in that
What about the languages
realm.
causing separation for you?
Say that
Because
again.
everything that I'm speaking to is very much not separating. Like it's a both and conversation. It's not either or black and white. And there's something I'm saying that's leading you to think that it's a separation. And for me, it's absolutely
Um,
both.
I think it's because when you say that they're captive and that they don't have
Do you
any responsibility
do
for
you
their
deny that
own
they are
health.
captive based on
No,
the
but
definition of that word?
let me finish. No, I don't deny that they're
Sure.
captive, but I feel that they can feel their body just as well as I can, and
I would agree with
I
that.
just as well as the choices that I could make for them. So I they have responsibility for their own body, and it's like I feel that we're equals. I don't feel, and I know that you say that's not possible because they're dependent in a physical sense, but
It's possible on
I
a soul
feel
level for
like,
sure.
yeah, and I feel like that can, if that's where your focus is, then it's not really about whether you open the gate or not. that to me feels like
It's not
that to me feels
focus.
like there's a pain body around that. Like this captive dependent, this word has got so much um charge in it.
It's being asked to be acknowledged. It doesn't have charge. It's not
Oh,
charged in my
well, I
body.
don't feel
It's
I have a
trying.
problem acknowledging that at all. If I had the means to open the gate, I would do that tomorrow. Absolutely. I don't feel
You
like
do
I
understand
have.
that I'm not suggesting that we open the gates.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But
Okay.
it's not something, it's like a way of levering. It's like saying, why don't you open the gate? It's like, it almost comes across as a sort of attack. Like, we've got, I feel like the horses, they, they know why they know what they're doing in a way. Like they're responsible for the situation that they're in on that level, like just as I am.
Okay. Would you believe that about children?
I can't talk personally about children because I don't have any. I haven't had any. Um,
There's no difference.
well, I'm not
Dependency
saying they're
is
the
the
same
same
or different because
emotionally.
I
I
don't.
mean, be
I'm
it
not talking about children. I mean, I wouldn't want to kind of talk about something I don't really have personal experience apart from having been one,
okay.
of course. So yeah, I don't.
So, having been a child, would you want the same philosophy applied to you that you are responsible for yourself in a dependent state as a child?
I felt, yeah, I feel that I came into the family I came into because I chose to. And although it was very challenging at times, I feel like it was what I, for whatever reason, it was what I needed to strengthen me in certain ways. So I don't feel like it wasn't perfect. It was absolutely perfect, just as it was. And there are better parents, obviously. Not obviously, but there are better parents than my parents were able to be for me. But in a sense, there weren't because they were perfect for me because I chose before I came into that life to experience all of those, what I would consider as the projections, the conditioning, the attitudes, all of that. I chose to be there so that it would strengthen me, so that it would make me what I am. So I'm really grateful to my parents. I really appreciate them for who they are. And I see also things that I would kind of have blamed them for when I was younger. I see why they took that on from their parents. And so it's like, I don't think there's anything wrong. I think we're just, but I mean, a child, obviously it's slightly different in that children can grow up and become independent, and the animals can't have that in the way that it is, the situation that it is as it is. But I genuinely think they know that part of them that is one with all, like, it's like, for example, I really feel like we're just friends. We've just got different skins on, and this time round they came as the horses and I came as a human. But it wouldn't be any different if I was one of the horses and they.
If you were a rodeo person who was causing
Yeah,
deliberate extreme harm, would you have the same philosophy of, oh well,
yeah.
they chose this, it's okay for me to whip and lash and beat them? And if that's not true, how does the argument stand
Well, I'm not, though. I'm not.
up? Well, that's convenient, but there's lots of people out there that are.
I think that argument, it's not really an argument, it's just a kind of perspective. But yeah, I think it does stand up. I think that we all take responsibility on that soul level to come in and have those experiences, even though a lot of them are horrific. I think it does. It does kind of apply to all of those situations.
So do you think there's no room for social justice? on this planet?
Not at all. It's quite the opposite. It's quite the opposite. It's like those experiences. For example, if somebody came in here and they were like a serial murderer and they were the most awful, evil person,
Mm-hmm.
they are living that so that others can see that that's what they don't want to be. They're living the contrast. They're creating contrast because we can never understand why we don't want to be that if it isn't there, if there isn't a sort of somebody who's taking that on
But their
and
victims,
giving us that gift. It's a gift.
but based on what you're saying, their victims are soulfully agreeing to being their victims. And I think that's a really slippery slope. It's like, I
Yeah.
agree with you. I think all souls do sign up for what they come here for. And I think we need to like be a little bit more
I yeah, I get that. Yeah.
justify anything.
I totally
Mm-hmm.
agree with that. It's a slippery slope because then you can just sort of say, nothing matters. Essentially. Yeah, absolutely. But it's not really like, because I think if you see it in the right way, it doesn't make you less aware. It makes you more aware. Like it makes you more willing to engage with yourself and more responsible. And I just don't think God, I just don't think it's kind of, doesn't feel right to me to think of that, that my horse, and not even to think, but they don't feel to me like they are dependent in that way. And I get that they are physically. I totally agree. They are. But it's almost like, okay, we know that's like that. We know that's like that. It's like I am it's like I have to look after them every day. Like I spend hours and hours and hours looking after them. And I could say
It was your choice. That's not
I'm their captive dependent because I kind of
you.
am. I can't go anywhere. I don't go on holiday and I
I mean,
don't
they
just,
didn't.
I don't know that it is my choice in
This
a
is like
sense. I don't know that it is on that level.
this is when it starts turning into
It's
spiritual
not really
bypass.
because,
Well,
yeah, it's
because you
kind of
chose
easy to say, well, that's your choice. It's kind of easy to say
they
that's your
didn't
choice, but it's
physically.
it's how it's ended up. I don't know. I don't know because at a certain point, yeah, in our lives, but things change, things happen, things move on, and and yeah, I just think it's not. I don't think there's that separation between me and them. That's what I'm trying to say. It's like there's not this difference that you're talking about.
I think when you acknowledge the difference, the separation disappears.
I don't feel separate from them, though. I don't feel separate.
Like by acknowledging their dependency, well, neither do I. I don't feel separate from my horses either. But the practical reality is that they are stuck with me no matter what. And I am not stuck with them by anything other than choice. And so when I
Yeah, see,
bring,
I don't really believe that.
okay,
Yeah. I don't believe they are stuck, though, because I think that if they truly had a desire to be somewhere else or do something else, that would happen for them. They're not stuck any more than any of us are. Like the universe.
well, there sure are a lot of animals suffering that are choosing a lot of really serious pain. Then, from that standpoint,
It's not that they're choosing it. It's because they know they can't. They don't have a choice not to. They don't realize they. It's like a lot of us don't realize the choices that we could have. Like, and yeah, I get that there's a lot of suffering, but the suffering is this paradigm that we're in. I would just say that the way that I feel the paradigm will change is through seeing the truth of who we are in others. So it's like then the illusion will just disappear, and it's more of a spiritual perspective. But I feel like just being able to forgive ourselves, just as you said, for the guilt that we've got, that is what separated us from that universal creator, whatever you want to call it, God, the universe, in the first place.